So, this year hasn't been the kindest to Luka and the Mavericks. Coming off of an impressive postseason run last year that included an upset in the second round against a 60-win Phoenix Suns team, which then translated to the Mavericks' first conference finals appearance since 2011, many people had fairly high but very reasonable expectations for Luka and Dallas heading into this upcoming year. Sure, the loss of Jalen Brunson in the offseason certainly had some damaging potential. However, with the addition of Christian Wood in a relatively wide open Western Conference filled with teams that had major concerns with their roster construction, it still led many people to believe that Dallas was a lock to make the playoffs. But unfortunately, everything didn't go as planned. By the middle of January, Dallas was struggling to find some solid ground in the standings, as the Mavericks were only able to muster up a record that was slightly above 500. In an attempt to salvage the season and to find a potential solution, and stumbled across a disgruntled Kyrie Irving out in Brooklyn. Irving, who was easily viewed as one of the most talented offensive players in the NBA, was viewed as a major acquisition and a potential difference maker for the remainder of the season, as many people believed that he would be more than enough to fill in the void that was left by the loss of Jalen Brunson. Personally speaking, I wasn't that high on the acquisition, as I knew that there were not only other major concerns with the Mavericks, but also the Western Conference in subsequent days became much more competitive as other teams also made major additions and upgrades to their roster. But even with my pessimistic viewpoint, I did not believe that the Mavericks would end the season as poorly as they did. Actively, as I am recording this video, it has become official that the Dallas Mavericks are unable to make a playoff appearance, as they have missed the play-in tournament altogether, finishing the regular season with the 11th best record in the Western Conference. However, the layers behind the Mavericks situation is much more complex than them just finishing with the 11th seed this season. And of course, with this level of complexity, it does warrant the question, who is at fault and what is the next move for the Dallas Mavericks? Because when you have an all-time great player like Luka Doncic on your roster, throwing away seasons like this is completely unacceptable. First, we have to tackle the whole Kyrie Irving trade and why it failed so miserably, but more importantly, moving forward, what exactly does this mean for the Dallas Mavericks? When the transaction first occurred, like I stated in my intro, I personally wasn't that high on the addition. When it comes to Kyrie as a talent, it's pretty undeniable. One of the greatest ball handlers in NBA history, the ability to finish around the lane, as well as players who are 6 inches taller than him, and footwork so meticulous that he basically has every counter to his disposal. With a player whose bag is this deep, of course he's earned the right to be in conversations to be one of the most skilled scorers in NBA history, but in particular to his relationship with Luka Doncic, adding him to the roster certainly was going to add a level of depth to this offense that he desperately needed. However, the problem with this line of thinking is that I continue to ask myself, well, is that enough? In the games in which both Kyrie and Luka were available, the Mavericks had a record of 5-11. Before Kyrie was added to the team, in the Luka-led lineups, the Mavericks had an offensive rating of 118.5. But then when adding Irving to the lineup with Luka, albeit in a small sample size, sure, there was an improvement offensively, however, it was marginal. Furthermore, in a league where volume scoring from an individual standpoint is the most accessible that it has ever been, defensive versatility or lack thereof can make or break some of the better playoff teams, and chemistry and continuity have consistently played a much larger role to deep postseason runs rather than the sheer talent. I believe my questions about the true value of Kyrie's impact to a team are very valid. Now, to be fair to Kyrie, the Mavericks failing post-trade deadline in the manner in which they did had very little to do with him. The Mavericks have a laundry list of concerns that needed to be addressed before they can actually make a deep postseason run, and Kyrie being the replacement of the Jalen Brunson production that was lost may be at the top of that list. However, it still does not amount to the overwhelming amount of problems that this team currently faces. So this isn't necessarily me dogpiling on Kyrie, rather than acknowledging, as talented as he is, the level of commitment that it will take to obtain him to be on a roster may not be justifiable due to the fact that there's so many other concerns that a team may face that unfortunately he just doesn't address. And this is a problem that I actually think Kyrie will face regardless of what team he is on, which is why I believe it'll be very interesting to see what type of interest that he yields in the open market in the upcoming free agency class. But this undeniable truth is especially applicable to a Mavericks team that has a star in Luka Doncic, who doesn't have the ability to really maximize who Kyrie Irving is as a player due to overlapping offensive tendencies that quickly put a ceiling on how complementary a player like Kyrie and Luka can be when they're on the floor with one another. And in my opinion, that is the biggest problem with the Dallas Mavericks. that the way that they run their offense and play basketball out there in Dallas, it is not conducive to basketball that will translate to consistent deep postseason runs, and more importantly, maximize some of the more offensively talented teammates that have been surrounding him. Great example is the Kristaps Porzingis experiment. When the Dallas Mavericks received the 7-3 unicorn back in 2019, it was believed that they had stumbled across the new, young, fresh, up-and-coming duo out in the Western Conference with Luka and Porzingis that had the potential to take over the league. However, after a year recovering from an ACL injury as well as 2 shortened seasons, it was already reported that there were questions and concerns about the chemistry between Luka and Porzingis, and how Porzingis was frustrated as he believed that he was more of an afterthought rather than the co-star alongside Luka, and even identified his role on the team as a mental battle. To further the point, when some of these concerns about Porzingis not being maximized in the offense was brought to the attention of Rick Carlisle with the lack of post touches from the 7-3 big men, Rick Carlisle vehemently denied the idea of running more post-ups through Porzingis, and he believed that the 7-3 big man was best utilized as a floor spacer at the top of the key.
Post-up's not a good play anymore. It's just not a good play. It's not a good play for a 7-3 guy. It's a low value situation. Our numbers are very substantial that when he spaces beyond the three-point line, we're a historically good offensive team. So look, let's get off of all this stuff about, KP needs to go in the post. He doesn't.
Now, to be fair, at the time, the numbers certainly backed this up because Porzingis' post-up numbers certainly weren't impressive. However, just coincidentally, I guess, when it was time for the Mavericks to move off of Porzingis due to very legitimate health concerns, they decided to opt in to receive another ball handler in Spencer Dinwiddie and a big man in Davis Bertans, who was a better three-point shooter, to further optimize the offense that they had at the time, while Porzingis was then traded to Washington, and his post numbers immediately improved significantly. So much so that this season, Porzingis just so happened to have the best year of his career, and he was at worst the 3rd best post scorer in the NBA this season, with a points per possession of nearly 1.2, while converting over 60% of his shots in the post. Yeah, I don't think that's that coincidental whatsoever. And so now, instead of asking the question, why should the Mavericks have ran post-up plays with Porzingis when he was on the team, we should be asking the question, why is it that Porzingis couldn't produce at this level while on a Mavericks squad that was more offensively talented with an all-time great offensive star in Luka Doncic? Or how about the Jalen Brunson situation? I know many people are trying to rewrite history, but let's get the facts straight. When the Knicks signed Brunson over the offseason, the overwhelming consensus was that that was a bad contract, that Jalen Brunson was overpaid because his production as a 16 to 20 point per game scorer, receiving nearly $25 million a year, did not make sense. And even though yes, it would have been ideal for the Mavericks to keep Brunson, however, getting into a bidding war with the Knicks at that price point might not have made the best sense either. But now fast forward to where we are today, and people being overly critical of a transaction that no one thought was a good idea in the moment, because now the Mavericks are not going to be in the playoffs, while Jalen Brunson and the Knicks will make a postseason appearance, as Brunson is having easily the best year of his career, performing at an all-star level, matter of fact, a borderline all-NBA caliber player this season, and as the year continues to progress, he's gotten even better. And now everyone gets to be overly critical of that front office out in Dallas. Rightfully so, but I don't think that many people are asking themselves the real question, and that is, why is it that no one saw this level of potential in Jalen Brunson while he was playing in Dallas alongside Luka Doncic, so the Mavericks or Knicks might have actually been justified in giving him this type of contract? Because again, no one saw this in Jalen Brunson before he went to New York. And similar things are already happening with the Kyrie Irving experiment. Now, of course, it's a small sample size. Jason Kidd might not be an adequate coach, and there are some sets and pet plays that Luka and Kyrie run with one another that gives them some quality looks. But for the most part, I see way too often, especially down the stretch of close games, Kyrie and Luka basically taking turns dominating the basketball. And in particular, when it's Kyrie's turn to handle the offense, Luka seems completely disengaged. Times where he's literally floating away from the offense, he's waving off screens that are being set by his teammates, or even worse, still complaining to the referees about a play that happened 2 possessions ago. Now, with all that being said, let me be extremely clear on what I'm attempting to convey to you, because I know for a fact many people might be sensitive of all the facts that I just laid out. First, of course, there is room for criticism to that front office out in Dallas because I do believe they've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Also, some of the things that I brought to your attention in this video could honestly just be chalked up to a young player dealing with growing pains or need a little bit more time to grow into the star that he is, because let's not forget that Luka Doncic is still like 24, 25 years old. But the bigger picture that I'm trying to convey to people is that too many of us are focused on the symptoms rather than the bigger problem. And that is, how do you adequately build a team around Luka Doncic in the system that is being ran out in Dallas without marginalizing the players that surround him, so you can get the most of this experience so the team can consistently make deep postseason runs. It is quite comical to me how many people play high and mighty behind the hindsight game where they sit here and they tell you they should have just kept Jalen Brunson, without acknowledging that even if Jalen Brunson was on this team this year, sure, they might have made the playoffs, but let's be honest with ourselves. Is there anyone who believed that the Dallas Mavericks were going to make a deep postseason run in a Western Conference that's much more competitive when Dallas' defense is significantly worse than it was before, while Brunson would not have been anywhere near close as a player that he is in New York alongside Luka out in Dallas? You know what really bothers me? Everyone in the NBA community knows the answers to that question, but everybody's acting dumb now. It is fine to criticize Jason Kidd, the front office, Mark Cuban for squandering away a lot of talent that surrounded Luka, but we all know the playing style out there in Dallas is not maximizing who's surrounding him. And what makes it even crazier is that now people are trying to completely avoid criticizing Luka because of the numbers that he posted up, which is crazy because 4 months ago I predicted this. Look, Luka, I'm trying to save you right now because I promise you the NBA community will have you be a slave to the box score, tap dancing for stats. It's going to be ridiculous. I made a video titled Luka Doncic is in NBA hell, and in that video I highlighted how there's this vicious cycle in the NBA community where you have these star players that are uber talented and they're going to put up great numbers because of the system that they play in, but the system that they play in does not lead to any type of consistent success. And then when it's time to throw criticism because of the lack of success, either one or two things are going to happen. Either people are going to viciously criticize that star, or B, which is even worse, they're going to defend the star by utilizing the same stats that started off the cycle in the first place. And you know what people are doing right now? That's right, defending Luka Doncic with the numbers that they know is a part of the problem. Personally, I do not need to see you have another 38-8 season or have the basketball nerds ovulating over your on-off numbers. Like, I don't need that again, bro. We know you're an all-time great player. It's time to start making the adjustments now, so when you are on the team that has the proper pieces surrounding you, you can continue to maximize who's on the floor with you, so it can lead to more consistent postseason success and inevitably a championship. But yo, those are just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. Also, the play-in tournament starts today. If you want to watch the games with me live, make sure you click the link in the description as well, or go to playback.tv/LowsRoom. I will be watching both play-in games today. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.